From Army to deputy sheriff to super successful salesperson and then failed entrepreneur to a very successful real estate investor. Let's see what's going to happen on today's show.
Welcome to Real Estate Investing Secrets. We're all looking for freedom and the opportunity to live better, more fulfilling lives. But most of us were trained our entire lives to work for someone else and chase their dreams. How can we use real estate investing as a vehicle to achieve financial freedom? My life is dedicated to answering your real estate investing questions and helping you build an investing business that allows you to change your life and the world around you, and to enable you to turn your dreams of financial freedom into a reality. My name is Mike Hambright from FlipNerd.com, and your questions get answered here on the Real Estate Investing Secrets Show.
Hey, Chad, how you doing today, buddy?
What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. Super excited to see you. We just spent not a couple weeks together, but almost a week together at Investor Fuel. We talk about that on the show all the time, but today we are here for Real Estate Investing Secrets on the Flip Nerd Podcast Network. We have over 1,500 podcasts. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure that you subscribe on iTunes. You can watch our videos on YouTube, or just you can catch us on any podcast provider that's out there. So we are here today with my good buddy, Chad Weeden, and we're going to talk real estate investing. So Chad, tell us, what brought you to real estate investing?
Man, just as you mentioned, failed entrepreneur, the first go around, and, I've kind of gotten away from saying failed entrepreneur. That's obviously how I felt the first go around. You're passionate about your business. You're passionate about what you start.
We're always failing as entrepreneurs, right? We're figuring out how not to fail.
Right. But the thing about it is I wouldn't change anything with my trajectory, because we learned so much more than a freaking college degree can teach anyone or teach myself. So it was a rough patch to get through, but really I'm just a dad chasing time, man.
Yeah, that's cool. I get to hear Chad about once a quarter. And we talk now and then too in between the events. But Chad's a member of Investor Fuel. It's a nationwide mastermind that Mike Hambright has founded, and we get together with about 150 real estate investors from around the country. And we're all kind of high level, not super high level, but we're usually doing somewhere between 20, 30 and 400 or 500 deals a year. All the different people in the room. So we get to know each other at a different level than just business or even just personal. It's kind of a cool mix. So I've heard Chad tell the story before that he's chasing time, and I think we should have a hashtag for that or a t-shirt, because it really says a lot. So let's dig a little bit more into your backstory though, Chad. So I know that you started in the military. I guess why don't you start from there and then take us through to when you actually totally focused in real estate investing?
Yeah. And before I start that, while I've got this thought, I just want to lay out, I know there's a lot of new people who listen to this, and there's even folks that are experienced that listen to this podcast. Man, I will tell you, the number one mistake I ever made in my first business was I did not invest into myself and get into a mastermind. And they were out there in the gym business. I did not invest into that. And I really thought that was, I don't know why in your mind you think that's wasting money, but that was like the number one first thing I did when I quit my job, and we can get into that later. But I felt like I needed to be around peers that had the same motivation, same problems that I had, because, especially if you guys are new listening, it's tough to be sitting to talk, or it's tough to talk to people and have somebody, a confidant, that you can literally just bitch about having a $250,000 quarter. Like, there's just not a lot of people out there that you can just complain to about having a $250,000 quarter. And when people hear that, they don't realize that, we're business owners and we have other expenditures, coming out of that. That's not all net profit. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but super important to get wrapped into a mastermind or a group of like-minded individuals. So I know we kind of went off there, but I wanted to talk about that thought for a second, because Investor Fuel, and there's a ton of masterminds out there. I love Investor Fuel. It's changed my whole business. from the start. So just if you're new and you're listening, you need to find some like-minded individuals to connect with. So that I'll leave it at that. So what was the question again?
No, right. No, that was an awesome injection of wisdom. And even if you can't afford to join some big flashy mastermind, create your own. When I was just a kid in my early 20s starting businesses, I learned about that mastermind thing, and I grabbed other guys from different businesses I knew, and we just kind of started hashing out problems with each other, and kind of get you to where you can get to a little faster. But yeah, so my first question was, I've seen some of the, first of all, we want to thank you for your service, number one. But I've seen some of your social media posts back when you were a young strapping lad holding back a bunch of ferocious dogs. So tell us, first of all, how did you even get into the Army?
Man, I was an athlete in high school, obviously, and I could have went and played college basketball at some smaller schools, but I'd always wanted to join the FBI of all things. And, the military was a way to do that and go to school at the same time. So, I'm not upset with my recruiter, but he did lie to me about, being able to get in and go to school and get your degree. Some of that was true. Most of it was not. The fact is I was a police officer in the military, and we were working shift work, and I'd always wanted to be a dog handler. So later on in my career, I had an opportunity to do a hardship tour. And with that came selection of my duty station in a specific school that I wanted to go to, and that was canine. And I finished out my last almost 3 years as a canine handler in the military. And man, that was the best job I ever had, and I loved it. And that kind of parlayed into being I went full time at the local sheriff's office in South Carolina, and I became a full-time deputy. And then all these years later, here we are, 23 years later, I'm still a reserve deputy. I fly from Colorado to South Carolina, and I serve and protect and walk houses, just trying to burn time so we can get more into that. But yeah, that's kind of my story on how I ended up in the military.
So then when you left the military, you became a deputy sheriff in South Carolina, but I know you live in Denver. So where were you born?
I was born here in Colorado. I was born in a small town, Fort Lupton, Colorado, which is about 25 minutes from where we live, right now. And it was a farm community. I always tell people I grew up on the other side of the tracks. My parents, we were, I would say, lower middle class. I mean, for God's sake, my mom, and I always joke with her, and she'll probably laugh when she hears this if she listens to it. But, I was a kid that wanted to have Nikes and the Reebok pumps, and here my parents were taking me to Kmart to buy ponies for basketball shoes, So
listen, I've told that same story on stage. I had love, but I didn't have any Jordans in 1989 and 90, believe me.
And then when you talk about failed entrepreneurship, you talk about how you grew up, my parents were awesome. And I got to watch my dad bust his ass, raise 3 kids, and he was a contractor. And in the construction world, my mom was, stay-at-home mom until she decided to go back and get her nursing degree while we were in school. And so there was a lot of, tight times on money. And, it's generational too. My parents are old school. So even if they did have money, they told us we didn't, which we need to get better at that with our dang on kids ourselves, So, but that's kind of that was my path. And maybe that's some of my motivation as I got older. And I think that parlayed into when I was a deputy sheriff, I'd work extra duty, and I had this extra duty assignment, and it was in a neighborhood called Wildwood, which was like the exclusive neighborhood in Columbia. And I used to just ride around as a young guy, like 23 years old, and ride around these huge 4 and 5 and 6,000 square foot houses and just wonder, what do these people do for money? I'm sitting there making freaking like $11.75 an hour. My paychecks were $7.86 every 2 weeks, so I was just always looking for something bigger.
Yeah. And part of the reason I brought up, where'd you grow up to where you were a dep at is it'll lead into how you're doing some of your business today too, which will be eye-opening for some folks. But so from deputy to gym owner, right? Did you get bit by the entrepreneur bug, or were you an entrepreneur since you were a kid?
Well, I went deputy from deputy to the car business of all things. And that was a long stint. That's where I really truly learned about money and how to make money. And that is the toughest business to get into and to be successful in. And man, I'll tell you, when I first started at Dick Smith in South Carolina, I started selling cars. And I was about a month into it. I was about to go back to the sheriff's office. You know, I went 3 weeks. I had not sold a car. One of my mentors, Eddie Marisich, he is the number one mentor in the sales area for me in my lifetime. Probably the best salesperson I've ever seen. You know, he brought me up to the sales tower one day out of 3 weeks, and he said, "Let me tell you something. You're not going to take any more. You take any more of my ups, and you don't log them, or you don't bring them to me to talk to them, I'm going to blow your ass out of here." And that was just kind of like a wake up call, because I was like, man, I don't know if this is right for me. And I just finally started listening, and I was listening to him before, but, you know, just kind of had to go hard at me. And in just like 10 days, I made what I made at the sheriff's office. So I decided to stick it out one more month just to see. And that was in August of 2003. I made $6,200 on like 11 units. I really didn't even know what I was doing. I made triple the amount of money in 1 month than I made at the sheriff's office. And from that point, I said, all right, let me just get this 6 months. And then it was just, all right, let me get this another 6 months. And then from there, I got into management and moved up, and I was a, you know, top performing finance and insurance manager. You know, and there's one thing, and I've said this in other podcasts, is just always people you meet in your life. And that's why it's super important to get around other people, and your network is your net worth. And at that time, my network was definitely my net worth, because Eddie sat me down in his office. You know, we were drinking buddies. And one night we were sitting in his office, and he says, "Son, you stick with me. Your neighbors will be doctors and lawyers." And, you know, I don't have a college degree. I went in the military. I have some college. And when somebody bought into what I was doing a good job. You know, they let me know I was doing a good job. And that was powerful for, you know, somebody that's 15 years older than me to say that to me. That really changed my trajectory then. Like, I was like, I immediately went home and I told Wendy, I said, "Man, Eddie said if I stick with him, our neighbors are going to be doctors and lawyers," you know. And that was empowering, very empowering. And I'll never forget that my whole life. So maybe somebody's listening and had something empowering that somebody has said to them that they can tap into. I tap into that to this day, still to this day. Super important, you know, just meeting people, getting around people that want to see you succeed.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was in commission sales until I was 30-ish also. And being around those old school guys like that, you know, like, I'm the kind of guy who needs to be crushed, and that's okay. That's the way I was raised. If you hit a home, like, you know, we listened to a guy speak the other day, you hit a home run and it was like, run faster, not a clap on the back, because it's gone. What about tomorrow? What about tomorrow? What about tomorrow? I think we're losing some of that. We're all softer than we used to be. We're definitely softer on our kids than our parents were. And it keeps going back, right? The grandparents, the great grandparents. But I think in business, it's different, right? You have to, you know, you have to be able to like cut that really quickly and just say, hey, if I want to be effective, especially you're a lifestyle guy, so you want to work an hour a year, let alone, you know, 100 hours a week. So if you want to work an hour a year, you need to learn how to punch, and that punch has to be worth 10 times what an average guy's punch is worth, basically, you know. So I think it's important to take those thoughts like that, like you just said, from those mentors and use them and learn from those guys. And we should all be seeking that, guys or girls, you know, whether they're male or female mentors. And it's just a huge part of being an entrepreneur. And as a salesman, I don't care if you were W-2'd, I don't care as an F&I guy, you had a big fat salary and got, you know, spiffs or whatever, you're still an entrepreneur, because if you don't produce, if you don't close, you don't eat. Right.
Yeah,
so that trains us for business.
That's a misconception. You know, even when I got into management and was an F&I manager, we were 100% commission. We ate what we killed, you know.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, the difference between what I'm doing now and what I was doing then is literally nothing. The only difference is that I sat in an office, chained to an office 5 days a week, literally almost every Saturday of the year.
Yeah.
And I was dependent on another company. They were the ones that were driving the business to us. So that's the only difference. Now I'm tasked with driving all the business to our company, and I'm tasked with, now I've got a team. I generally don't handle sales anymore, but it's just an evolution. And going back to a mastermind investor field, I thought really I just wanted to be a solopreneur, maybe have some VAs and do that. But one thing I realized was there's a lot of successful people in that group, but there was also a lot of people that are just freaking working. Like they just seemed like they were like they were just tired, like they were tired. And I just could see myself saying, gosh, I looked like that in the car business. So I when I joined, I wanted to do like 100 wholesale deals a year and had all this stuff. And I already had a decent business going. But then I finally just sat back and I was like, man, gosh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel like that. And obviously I want to have a good business, and a lot of people have asked me, recently, how did you craft your business to be a lifestyle business? Was it intentional? And I always have to ponder and say, well, I don't know. Was it intentional? I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it was intentional. When I first started this business, I just wanted to replace $250,000 a year income. And so I've always approached it as that's a dang good living. My wife makes a good living. So together, I'm not putting a bunch of pressure on myself. I can go and make 250 grand a year with my eyes closed. I can do it by myself. And that's been a big challenge for me in growing a team, is because I know that I can do a lot of that stuff myself, but then I have no time. So that's been a big change in my business, is getting a team to just keep increasing our business and still chasing that time.
Sure. And even, I guess, I want to go back to limiting beliefs for in a second, but when you look at that, let's just say 250 is that goal, right? So you're like, hey, I got to be at 250. I got to be at 250. As you inch your way out of those minute to minute tasks. And I've been in the business a long time, entrepreneur for my whole life. And I'll do the same thing. Like if I can take this water bottle and screw the cap on, I'm not going to teach someone to do it for me. But if I just saved 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, if we keep increasing that, it compounds. And I think some of the guys and girls that you and I are lucky enough to kind of learn from, or like just watch them, that's what they seem to do, is they seem to get to a point where they're only doing truly what is worth $5,000 or $10,000 an hour versus doing some of that small stuff, even though we can do it ourselves. And it's kind of less work to just do it ourselves, but we're going to keep doing it ourselves forever if we don't get out of there. And
Right.
One thing I wanted to bring up, some of the people who are watching and listening, they're not at that point yet where you and I are throwing around 250 like it's a joke. And because we were in sales, we know you can literally make $250 million as a salesman. I mean, that's crazy. But your first year, you're thinking, hey, 25K as a sheriff, I'm happy. When I was a kid, we're not old, but we're not young. And now it's like, hey, I made 100. Now I can make 150, because again, it's all on our back. So we put those rocks in our backpack, right? And we're going uphill. So 250, some guys would yell at you and I saying, you two fools are happy at 250, because that's my number every year, right? Minimum 250, 250, 250.
Right.
They're like, you can make $1 million just as easily. Just step it up a little bit, right? But I want to say that to some of those younger, newer people at this, at the same level, mentally, is if you want to do 1 or 2 deals a year, you can get to those 10 deals a year. It might take you 1 or 2 years to get there, but it's a lot easier than you think. Because if you can do 1, you can do 100.
Well, here's the thing, you're talking about a lot easier, and we're throwing around these numbers, is, God, I wish I could have started this business where, I just was trying to leave like a $60,000 a year job. A $60,000 a year job to me feels like it'd be a lot less pressure to be successful than to have to make the nut that I had to make when I stepped away, not for the first time, but for the second time. And, when I stepped away from that kind of money, the first time it was an adventure. When I stepped away from that kind of money the second time, it was reality, because if I failed, I may not even be married at this point. I'd already been broke. I've bootstrapped, we've been behind on car payments. We've paid employees before paying our own bills. We've done all that kind of stupid shit. And, and that's partly why I've been just very conservative and and so going back to what I would not change, I wouldn't change my first business because I'm a maverick. I'm a maverick by profile, predictive index. So sometimes I'm just like, I'm a visionary, and I just freaking go and do it. And being successful in sales, sometimes you feel like you give yourself an extra parachute because you just know you can sell yourself out of any bad situation. I've been behind the eight ball so many times in sales where, there's months where I had to make freaking 30 grand, and, I pound it out and I make 30 grand because I'm behind the eight ball. So as an entrepreneur, when you're good like that, it can be a bad thing on the other side too. And that's been a tough thing for me to be able to keep in check. And it still is to this day. It's tough for me to keep in check. So, if somebody's out there, you're making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, just when I first started flipping houses, I just backed into the numbers. I took out the minus what I would pay in taxes. I said, you know what? I can make a living, and I can literally replace my lifestyle, my life now, and have more time if I just flip 5 houses and make 40 grand a house. That's 200,000, same thing. And that's how I did it. So anybody's listening, just back into your numbers, back into your goals, and start small, and then things will grow.
Yeah, no, that's the absolute truth. And like you said, if you got to make 30 grand in a month, you can do it. So imagine, again, challenging both of us, like we should be pushing for 300, but at a certain level, you have to give up something to get there. And not everybody's willing to do that. And some of us, once we have one pair of Reebok pumps or Jordans, we don't need 100 pair. So we might just be happy being happy. And that's a whole different conversation. But let's talk a little bit more about real estate investing. So what kind of investing, what types, like what style of investing have you done throughout your real estate investing career?
Well, I started out wholesaling. And if you back up how my wife and I really started, is I got her real estate school as a stocking stuffer. And she's like, what, you were investing in me? I'm like, no, but I knew you didn't want to go back to the classroom after we had shut down our first business. So, and I just figured, we've talked about it forever. Both of us talked about getting our real estate license. I'm back in jail in the car business. You're kind of the guinea pig. Let's see what you can do. So I spent a lot of time when I was in the car business, back in the car business. She's riding around on the golf cart, selling, making money, sitting by the pool, hanging with the kids, and she's making money, and she's a hustler too. So really, that was kind of how that's really how I ended up started getting my mind wrapped around real estate. And then I started wholesaling, and I ended up getting into flipping because I had a couple buyers. I wasn't a CBE. I was not a cash buyer employee, but on some deals, I would give them first rights to the deal before I sent it out. So I called these 3 of my normal buyers. They came through this house, and my wife has already been a successful agent at that time. And, she was top 20% agent at that time. And they tried to tell me her comps were wrong. And so as a husband, I'm like, man, bump you guys. And these guys are realtors too. 2 of them are. And, another one, he was a rehabber. And I kind of took offense to that. And 2, I knew that they were just trying to turn me into a cash buyer employee. And I was like, I'm not going to be a CBE. So I went and found the money to rehab the house, and our comps were 185. We sold the property for 184. And instead of making like a $5,000 assignment fee, we grossed like 44 grand on the deal. And that really changed my trajectory, for one, because we got through that one, and obviously you get some experience and some confidence. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I kind of went in 2018 and 19, more heavy on wholesaling, but we were still flipping. And then I just totally, when I moved to Colorado from South Carolina and quit my high-paying job after a couple of weeks, I was forced with a decision. And I know there's probably a lot of people that wholesale that are listening to this, and I know a lot of people that wholesale too. And I was faced with a decision. do I build my business? I already had a team of subs and that kind of thing for flipping. So it was, do I do the hustle? Because it's a hustle to wholesale. I said, do I take the hustle to wholesale, or do I leverage other professionals, as in construction subs? Do I leverage, and it's going to be a little bit longer hold times. The payout's always much more. And yeah, there's a managing part of that, but I didn't feel like it was, to me, being in the car business as long as I was, and having a prior business in the gym industry with 5 gyms, a bunch of people, a bunch of moving parts, I didn't feel like the trajectory I went to was nearly as labor intensive as me trying to build out a wholesale operation to make the same money. So that's kind of how I started. And then it's moved into, I primarily flip. We have rentals. And that's a focus for me right now in my business, and a focus for both Wendy and I is, we've proven that we can build a team and we can wholesale. I can do that if I want to do that. I can wholesale. We can do that. But I also have built a system and a great team on flipping. So that opens a lot of doors from there. I feel like once you get that down and you get that like dialed in, then I feel like you can take on a lot of other projects. You can take on multifamily, a bunch of units at one time. You can take on rentals. You can take building from ground up. Like there's just, once you figure that the flipping part out of, maybe it's labor intensive. Maybe you don't like doing it. Maybe people say it's a lot of work. Maybe it's more risky, but that opens, I feel like, a lot more doors than just being a wholesaler. So that's just my thought on that. Right or wrong?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Chad. So I was a wholesaler first. Actually, I was a landlord first. Everybody buys like a rental when they begin. Then I wholesaled, and then I started rehabbing and did that heavy for 5 years, and Mr. Home Depot, the whole thing. And then new construction. So I've done all that stuff. And I tell you what, the hardest thing for sure is flipping, only because you have to have that crew and that team, because you just can't, you can sub stuff out. But the way that I was rocking it, 3-4 at a time, like you got to have a team and you got to manage those guys. So you have to have that personality. But it does open up a lot of doors, because I would sit in living rooms and buy my own rehabs instead of buying them from a wholesaler. Nothing wrong with wholesalers, but you're looking at a wholesaler, and like guys like you and I, we could wholesale our way through life forever, right? And make good money. But it is a grind, and you don't want to have to do that all the time. So being able to rehab for sure opens up a lot of doors. So you guys, you've wholesaled, you've rehabbed, you've wholetailed, you have rentals. What's your favorite, I guess, of the 4? What's your favorite way to invest if you only had one way to do it from here on out?
Oh man, my favorite way to invest would probably be what I should have been doing the past, at least the last 5 years, is probably keeping at least 5 to 7 of those properties a year, and keep them as rentals. And I'm regretting that now. But at the same token, everybody's got a different business. I've got a machine that I'm feeding. I got a team of people that I'm feeding. So there's been quite a few deals where, at the end of the day, we've invested a lot of money into our business. We've invested into TV marketing. So, there is a cash flow aspect to business. And I just felt like if I just continue to flip, if I can build a flipping machine, people can say what they want, but I can be 65 years old and flip houses. It doesn't matter. And I feel like when you're talking to people and you go to meetups, or you're listening to things on YouTube, I think you got to kind of drown out the noise and really focus on what fits your goals. And my goals is to continue to do literally what I'm doing now, and that's work maybe 2 hours a day throughout a calendar year, 5 days a week. There are weeks where I don't work at all. There's weeks, and when I say work, I'm not sitting in an office. I might be on the boat. I might be at a Rockies game or Avalanche game. I might be skiing, and I'm checking emails or answering emails or working from my phone. Some people say, "Oh man, that's work." Well, maybe in your career path that you had, yeah, maybe that is work. But in the career path that I had, that is not work, because I'm not sitting playing the hurry up and wait game, sitting in an office, twiddling my thumbs, bored, because I'm only responsible for the amount of business that comes into my office. And once I get that done, then I'm sitting there with an idle mind. And I'm an A-type personality. There's no way I can just sit with an idle mind. So, is it work? I don't know. That's a great question. That's a question for everybody, is sitting there, is out of the office getting stuff done on the fly. Does that really work if you're going and doing the things that you like to do? I mean, I don't know. So for me, it works for now. Could change in 10 years. I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what being an entrepreneur is all about. So I go through those weird stints. And again, when I first started, I was 30, which was, no, I mean, it was even before that. I hate to say it. I was buying houses before that. But when I went totally solo, quit my real job. So I had not a big office, but I had an office, a humble office. I wore a suit. A lot of times I wore a tie, because back then, 16, 17 years ago, I'd go to meetups, like, you dress the part. Things have changed a lot now too. And when you first get started, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And, being in the car business or sales, when we're knocking on people's doors, you were supposed to look a certain way. But, I think that being an entrepreneur, that gives you those choices. And in the last decade, it's changed a lot. So you can, because of technology, look what we're doing right here, right? We're shooting video, from 2,000 miles away. It looks good, sounds good. It looks really good because we're on it, right? But yeah, I think you can build that lifestyle. And me being different than guys like you, or even, Hambright, like, I like to work because I'm just weird. So I feel like I'm out of rhythm if I'm not working. I'm not a jogger, right? Because you can see my belly. But I'm like a guy who runs. So if I'm not doing something, I feel weird. But then when I cut it off, like, I'm out, like, I'm totally gone, Right. So it's just kind of what feels right for that person. And so I want to talk about your secret weapon. We can't spend too much time on it, but or on her. But tell us what it's like. Number one, having a built-in agent that you can sometimes monetize your leads with, but more importantly, having a spouse or a partner who believes in you, is a true partner in the business and someone that you can count on. How does all that fit together for you guys?
Oh man. I would say, if she was sitting here with me, I would say we both would not be where we're at in our business, because we actually operate two separate businesses in the same industry, but neither one of us would be where we are today without each other. Number one. And number two, man, it's just good to have somebody. It's good to have somebody in the same household that has the same visions and aspirations as you do. And she's learned, unfortunately, she learned that she's had to lean on me and cheer for me, because I'm a visionary. And she's not as much of a visionary as I am. She's very conservative. So it's like our two profiles, we did predictive index profiles, and it was so funny because our two profiles actually work hand in hand with each other in marriage and in business. But we also learned a lot from our first business. I can say that I've gotten into my bed at night with my laptop maybe 2 times since I started my business venture back in 2017. That was something that, we both did when we were in our first business. We'd be sitting in bed at freaking 11 o'clock at night working on our laptops. So there was a lot of things that we learned together in our first business that we have, I guess you could say, enacted in our current businesses. Like for me, I want to get up. I'm an early riser. I want to get up. I want to be rocking and rolling 4:30, 5:30, and I want to be, most of my busy work, if I'm going to have an office day, I want it to be done by lunchtime. I don't want to be in the office any longer than that. And having an agent, with me in the house, gosh, working deals is so much easier. There's a lot of, hey, F you, go hire your own agent, or, hey, I'm good, I'm going to hire an agent, we do bigger, it'd be a great TV show. But man, we have the same goals, and I am spoiled. I literally, from the time we get a house staged and we're done with construction, I literally don't handle anything with a listing from that point on.
And that's so huge. I don't want to interrupt too much, but it's so huge. Yeah. I preach it all the time. I've been licensed forever, right? It's a big part of my business too. But you can trust me if you want to list houses with me, but honestly, like, you can't trust anybody with that newborn baby who doesn't love that baby as much as you or more. And that's what a rehab is. Cause God forbid you don't answer that one call or do that one follow-up. It might be that deal that takes you down. It really could be.
It's great. We have systems and processes in place with that. And, I listed a house with a buddy brought me 2 off-market MLS deals. So I was like, hey, you can have the listing. And let me tell you, one thing I learned, and he's a great realtor. One thing I learned is me and Wendy, we have our systems and processes. Like, we don't even need to talk about the deal. The deal comes in before COVID, when houses were on the market 90 to 120 days, it's a rehabbed house. It's a 5-day due diligence. We're not wasting 10 days to go through due diligence. Like, that's just part of it. And that's always on the counter. 5-day due diligence. We start out with no closing costs. We've been doing that forever. Now, do we do closing costs? Yes, we do, but we start out and counter, so we have systems and processes in place with that. And the wonderful thing about that is, we're to the point now, and it's been like this for about the past 3 years, is I don't even handle repair addendums. All the things that are time consuming. Wendy's, we've flipped enough houses, we've done enough properties that, Wendy just knows, like, when I see a repair addendum, it's for me to have a signature on it, literally, unless it's a huge expense, like a $5,000 or $10,000 expense, which very rarely happens. But if it's something like that, then we're talking about it before she counters. But generally, that's all handled before I ever get it. So it's, there's a lot of time saved. There's a lot of time saved in negotiating because, time is of an essence, type thing. But I think number one, it's just good to have somebody else done. Like, literally, me and Wendy mastermind. I was just telling this to some buddies the other day. Dude, we go on date night and it's like a mini mastermind, as much as we don't want it to be. It's like, hey, we're not talking any business tonight, but reality is that's our life. It's our business. Our business is, and she bounces things off of me with her team. I bounce things off of my team. And we're just in tune. We're in tune with that. And we enjoy how we've created our life, really. It wouldn't change anything, I don't believe.
Well, listen, as a super salesman, or at least self-proclaimed myself, my goal is to make Chad like me more. So if I make Wendy like Chad more happy, that means he's going to like me. Right.
Right.
So, no, but you know what? I know Wendy, and, I watch all of her stuff on social, and I don't talk to her all the time, but I do a lot of agent work on the side too. I have a team myself. So, I feel what you guys are doing, and I think it's super duper awesome. And I can see how you guys are together. And like, that's something to be, to be jealous of these days, right? Because you got to have that togetherness, because I've seen entrepreneurs, I've been partners or JV partners with people who let the other person come in and start telling me what to do.
Right.
And, you probably, Chad, would never say Dylan's like a tough guy or whatever, but when it comes to certain things, like, I don't waver, and it's just 0% chance, zero, right? Like, right. I'm voting a certain way. I'm wearing certain shoes. We already talked about this stuff, right? Yes. And I'll listen to what Wendy says, but I'm not going to listen to what, the average partner of mine's person on the other side is telling me to paint a house, because it just ain't going to happen. Because I'll just do it myself, right? But you guys have that, because that she wants what you want 100%. You guys are in line. So just super important out there. I think a lot of us, as we get started in real estate, we're always looking for partners, or if we're of age where we have like a spouse or a partner or whatever, not just business partner, but a life partner, someone that we're with. You gotta have some alignment there, because if you don't, it's going to be really tough. I've met a lot of people, dudes normally, right, who are just like, oh, I can't go to this meetup because I'm going to get in trouble. I'm like, that's cool, man, but just know you're never ever going to get somewhere if you can't change your ways. Something's got to change if you want to get bigger or better, right?
It is all about alignment. And a quick funny story: when Wendy and I we first started flipping houses, we would go into Home Depot or Lowe's or like Tile Store or whatever, and we literally would go separate ways, make all of our separate selections, and we'd come back, and it was so funny you talk about alignment, because literally her cart and my cart were almost identical on paint colors, or the lighting, the tile, the different tile we picked, flooring. We were just very in sync on that from the get-go. So that made it super easy. I do a lot of design on our houses, but she also does a lot of design on the houses. So I mean, it's like neither one of us has a specific, I guess you'd say, job role in that. It's more of, let's bounce it off of I'll bounce it off of Wendy, or my team knows, if you got any kind of exterior paint colors, anything like that, just, get windy on it. At the end of the day, we're probably going to pick the same stuff, but it's just easier to make that happen. And I can push more work off onto her.
Well, yeah, and she's not going to go with earth tones if we're doing everything in whites and grays on, at this time of the year, whatever it is, you know what I mean, whatever's going on, because she knows she's in the biz, right?
Yep.
So it's huge to have that.
Huge advantage.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable for you. So here's a good question, Chad, and answer this as deeply as you want to, but you talk about your lifestyle business and what you've been able to build and working on it every day, right? It's not perfect yet, but what's your real why of being in that, building a lifestyle business versus working 100 hours a week?
My real why is, number one, my real why was I was tired of watching my wife be a single mom when I was in the car business with all of our kids. And then the second why is our little autistic man, Will. At the end of the day, he needs his dad home. And there's only two people that are going to influence him more than anything else, and that's mom and dad. So I needed to get home. I needed to build a business that suited my lifestyle, where I could be home more, to be home with Wendy and help in that aspect, but also just be able to go and spend time. I love to travel. I've always wanted to travel. Everybody's like, man, do you get tired of traveling? I said, I don't know, maybe in the next couple of years I might. There's times where I do get a little bit tired of it, but then I also remember there's times where I was sitting in the finance office wishing I could go and do all the things that we do. So my number one why is our special needs little guy. And outside of that, our other kids. I mean, Ava is, I'm running out of time. She's 14. She's getting ready to turn 15. I'm running out of time where she wants to hang out with me. Luckily, she's still trying to get me to take her on a daddy ditch day to go skiing and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there's going to come a time, because we've already experienced it with Savannah, where she don't want to hang out with us or do anything with us at all anymore. And that was a learning lesson from our previous business. Savannah was a young girl. She was 7th and 8th and 9th grade and then to high school. And, she really got the short end of the stick. We had a new baby, and it wasn't just Will. It wasn't our special needs little guy. Our new baby was our Jim. And we were all just too blind to see that we were leaving a lot of things on the floor with that. Like, man, that was horrible. So that's my number one reason why is my lifestyle business is I just want to be home and be available as much as possible, and engaged around there. You have a lot of business is hard. We all have business stuff going on, and it's freaking hard. But I just feel like if I add it on, I know I can do a lot more, but that requires more hours and a lot more work and a lot more stress. And I think right now, for the next couple of years, I'm just looking to get Ava into college or out of high school, whatever she's going to be doing. From that point, William will be a little bit older, and the older he gets, the more freedom we get. If that makes any sense. I mean, he'll always live with us. We'll always have to take care of him. But as he gets older, things have, it's crazy to say, has gotten easier. So that's a big push for me. So I'm not trying to rush that, but I'm just like everybody else. I mean, I want to have $10, $20 million in the bank. I want to have 100 freaking rentals and not give two craps about what's going on in the world, the economy, all that kind of thing. So those are my goals. But I think we just got to be careful on how we align our life and our lifestyle with those goals.
Yeah, there's nothing that's more noble than your why, and I know your why, but like I said, if you wanted to share it, you did. So that's real life, And I think something, Chad, you and I have probably been in the room with a few multi-deca, maybe 100 millionaires, and heard them speak, and they talk about being present. And again, rather than having 3 extra Escalades and whatever else you need, right? Being present as they go from the kids, right? 5, 6, 7 to 20 or whatever, those days never come back. And some people don't have kids. That's okay too. Right. But we're all like, you're laughing about 65. And I'm like, man, I was a long ways from 45 not long ago. And I'm how far? You're like, we can flip house from 65. I'm like, man, we're going to be laughing. It'll be 65 like that, So you got to be able to breathe, because, man, these days go by quick. And, this is the whole reason why, for most of us, this is why we're an entrepreneur. It is to have the vacations and the cars and the house, but it's to be able to, when that day comes, sit back and go, no regrets. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So
you can make all the money in the world, but you can't take it with you.
no, right. And you can't make any more time. So you got to make that time count, because it's
Right.
it's the silly things that will be what we're remembered for a lot of times, I think, you know.
I think I covered this when I in my hot seat one time. Like, people don't realize the pressures, not only pressures as an entrepreneur, but the pressures that Wendy and I have on top of us, which is, I'm not discounting other parents, but they don't have the same pressure that we have. And they don't have the same long-term pressure that we have. You know, most people, they raise their kids, they go off to college, they go get their jobs, and there's, I mean, people want to leave legacy. If you have legacy money, or if you're in that position, they want to leave something for their kids. But the pressure for us, and I know we've talked about it, is, you know, I'm 44, I'm going to be 45 in January. We are in the prime time for the next 10 years of making money in our lifetime. And we're really focused on that. And it's not to make money and to have the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all that stuff. Now, I'm not going to get rid of our boat. I love our boat, but the number one thing we have to focus on right now is it's legacy money. We have to make sure that we have enough for William. I don't want my other two daughters to feel like they're left out, but they can have jobs and they'll be just fine. But the pressure in our life right now, as we're getting older, because you're right, it flies by. The pressure right now for us is to ensure that whatever we have built with this business, that it can take care of William to the day he dies, because we're going to be long gone before he goes into the next world. So that's important for us, and that's a big focus. But I don't want to lose sight of spending time. Like, it's a push and pull type thing. So it's just something that we got to work through and move forward and just freaking pound it out every day.
Yeah, it's all about balance, you know, and with age comes wisdom. Unfortunately, we're not always wise when we're 22, as wise as we are when we're 44, right? So I'm about 2 years ahead of you, so I'm a little bit wiser than you, but 44 was last week. So we gotta sit back and smell those flowers as much as possible.
I know.
So, Chad, we're coming close to the end. I know you kind of gave like your biggest advice for newer real estate investors is to get around other people, but
yes,
I want to go back to that. So again, what is your best advice for new real estate investors?
Oh man, best advice for new real estate investors is get rid of the noise. Get away from all the people that think you're crazy, and that if that's family, that includes that too. You know, and hell, if that's your spouse, you know, that includes that too, unfortunately. Because I think there's a lot of people out there in this world and in this lifetime that have just sat back on their haunches, one, because of confidence, and two, they're not around all the right people to motivate them and to lift them up. And I look back at my time in the car business, and I mentioned Eddie Marisich. The other one is Bill Goodwin, who's the COO of the company. You know, he brought me into his office. I had been in F&I training for like literally 3 days. They had somebody quit, and you know, I'm sitting in front of this man who's like an idol to me. He's like he's like a huge mentor to me. You know, he's like, hey, he sits back in his chair and he says, hey, I can put you at the Lexington store. You're going to probably cost me a shit ton of money. And hopefully you learn from that. Because if you don't, I'm going to have to put your ass back on the sales floor, and this ship's going to sail by. So you have two options. Do you want to go to the Lexington store and I'm going to throw you into the fire and you're going to have to learn F&I on the fly? You're going to cost me some money. You're going to cost yourself some money, but hopefully you learn from it. Or do you just want to stay in the training rotation? And I don't know when the next F&I position in the company is going to come up. And, you know, the maverick that I am, I said, man, I'm going to do it. And, you know, he cheered me on. Eddie cheered me on. My wife cheered me on. Yeah, I think it's important that you just really find the people that want to cheer you on and you confide with them. And I had confided with Eddie and my wife and Bill. Like, they all knew my goals. They all knew what I wanted to do. And they're all very supportive of it. And I've also had people that I've shared my goals with, and they are not supportive of. You can just look at them and tell that they are not supportive of it. Like I'd run around when I first started doing real estate investing. I was sitting in my office and I'm like, man, I'm going to use OPM. I'm going to use other people's money to buy houses and make a great living. And people would look at me like, oh, OPM, other people. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. That sounds great. Yeah. And then they'd come around like, hey, how's that OPM going? You know, it's like a joke. And then when I quit my job, it was like, oh, hey, Steve mofos, now you thought I was crazy. You thought I was stupid because I failed one time before. And now we've made it happen. So I think just Michael Jordan, man, watch that series, the Michael Jordan series, when he talks about motivation and using his haters as motivation. That's probably really truly some of my best motivation, is just using all the people that maybe they didn't say it, but you could surely sense that they thought you were freaking nuts. And I use that to this day, every day. You know, luckily my wife's not in that category. She's always rolled with the punches.
Yeah, been cheerleader. Yeah, it's either make it happen or die. And you know, I'm from Detroit, so I used to hate Michael Jordan, but when you watch The Last Dance now, like you said, to this day, there's still nobody, you know, they talk about Kobe or these other guys or LeBron. Give me a break. Like he will cut your heart out and hand it to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily live like that, but I always teach my guys who work for me, like, you have to have a psychotic sense of urgency, because if you can close one day early, you need to close, because you never know what's going to happen. That's just from sales, right? It's like, bring up the close early and often. Let's get moving towards it. What do we got to do to get you guys to where you want to be? If you're not ready today, when are you going to be ready? What's stopping you from being ready today? What'd you come in here for? Right.
Yeah. It's, you know, that's, I mean, I think we all just have different motivations, but number one is just, you know, get around people that see your vision, and it's important. It's super important. Get around people that want to help support you. They want to check in on you. They want to make sure that everything's going good.
There's nothing more important than that when you're an entrepreneur.
And then use your haters to add a little bit of fuel to the fire when you're feeling, you know, maybe overwhelmed or a little bit down. You know, this business it is a roller coaster to a degree. So, you know, just kind of pick your times when you want to use that motivation. Go from there.
That's it.
Yep.
All right, Chad. Well, I appreciate you giving us all this time today. So this is one of my longest shows, and like, Chad's a humble guy. He's never going to sit around and like brag about what he's doing. So I'm like, I don't know how long we can stretch this out. We can talk about other stuff, but not his success, because it's not his thing, you know. But I appreciate you being on. If people want to follow you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Easiest way is just connect with me on Instagram at Flipping Chad, and or Facebook. Chad Weeden on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way to connect. I would give my email, but I tend to get a lot of spam and BS emails, so I'm gonna shy away from that one.
No, and we'll have links to Chad's Instagram below and Facebook. So connect with him, follow him, watch what he's doing, get inspiration from him. And listen, if you have deals in Colorado or in South Carolina, hit him up. Or if you need to list a house and you want a top-notch realtor, you've always got Wendy, which what Mike and I have talked about, bringing some realtors on the show, or agents who focus a little bit more with investors. So we'll see if Wendy wants to jump on one day, because you and I both know a lot of agents like that.
That'd probably be a good show. That'd probably be a good one. That'd probably better. It'd be better than mine.
At least they'll have something pretty to look at, not our ugly mugs, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm like in a hoodie, you know.
Right.
Show up a little bit more professional looking than me. So
there you go.
We'll see.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Dylan Tanaka, your favorite real estate entrepreneur from Metro Detroit, and we'll see you guys on the next show.
Thanks for listening to today's show. There are 3 ways I can help you start or grow your real estate investing business. If you're a new investor and just getting started, the Flip Nerd Investor Coaching Program is the most effective program in America. I've been coaching and mentoring new real estate investors for 10 years, and my students have literally purchased thousands and thousands of properties. Many of them started with little to no experience at all. Our program is a paint-by-numbers program where we tell you exactly what to do week by week to make sure that you don't get distracted on your way to results. We show you how to build a real business, not just create another job for yourself. New memberships are limited. You can learn more and apply or schedule a call with me and my team at flipnerd.com/coaching. If you're an experienced investor doing a minimum of 10 deals a year, up to 500 deals a year or more, or have a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio already, you should check out our powerful Investor Fuel Real Estate Investor Mastermind. Over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors are members, and it's not uncommon for our members to 2 to 5x their business just from getting around other members at Investor Fuel. At Investor Fuel, each of us are business advisors to one another's businesses, but we don't stop at business. We focus heavily on becoming better people and living fuller lives. If you're looking for fuel for your business or fuel for your life, please check out investorfuel.com. Applications and interviews are required, as most investors are not a fit for our community. Please learn more at investorfuel.com. If you're not ready for coaching or masterminds but eager to start learning more about investing, please join our private Facebook group by visiting flipnerd.com/Facebook. New members get access to free training from us right here at flipnerd.com, and it's a community to safely ask your questions, a great place to get started. Simply go to flipnerd.com/Facebook to request your access today.